Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and it is time for the Game Week 23 tier list video. We're going to put a special focus on double Game Week players from Arsenal and from Manchester City in this video. But I think this is going to be a good one overall, and we're going to put these double Game Week players in amongst the single Game Week players to see how they stack up in the tier list. So guys, if you do enjoy this one, please do leave a like, please do subscribe. Very excited to get this one going. Alright, so as always, we've got our 5 categories. We've actually got 32 players today. I get excited. I want to rank so many players every single time I do this. So just bear with me, but hopefully we'll be able to get through this reasonably quickly. Well, we might not. But let's get on straight away with Solly March. I'm going to put March straight away in the avoid section. We have got a blank for him in Game Week 25, which is only in 2 game weeks time. So you're only going to get 2 game weeks out of March. And I feel like March's form has dropped off a little bit. He did have that amazing vein of form, but we saw that he was overperforming his stats. It wasn't kind of regular. And I feel like there's one other Brighton midfielder around the same price that I think is just so obvious which one you're going to choose between the two of them. And I definitely don't recommend going for both of them, because that is going to land you in some trouble come Game Week 25. And also there's a limited amount of midfield slots that we have available, and I don't think there's really place for 2 Brighton midfielders necessarily. So therefore March, I can't really see a scenario where he would be a good pick, to be honest. Next up, Trippier. I feel like maybe, I don't know, where is he right now, because we have got that blank. Newcastle have finally ended their clean sheet kind of streak. I feel like Trippier is still very much a player you do want to own, but is Game Week 23 the game week to be buying Trippier? I'm not actually sure. I feel like maybe if you still, for whatever reason, don't have Trippier in your team, is it worth just waiting until Game Week 26 when the blank is gone and is passed? And of course, guys, I should note on this one, I know that a lot of you guys are going to have different strategies and stuff. Some of you guys are going to free hit in 25, so you won't worry about the blank too much. Some of you guys are going to maybe wildcard in Game Week 25. So look, I know that this, talking about the blanks, is not going to apply to every single one of you. So please do consider that when I'm talking about the blanks. It's not going to be aimed at everyone, but I have to speak fairly generally. And I think generally speaking, most people are not going to be using chips in Game Week 25. Most people. I'm just going to put that one out there, and I think that's probably the right way to go about it as well. The free hit chip is going to be very powerful later on in the season. Next up, Enzo Fernandez. Going to put him straight in avoid. I think that's a pretty easy one because, you know, he's a 5 million midfielder, fairly cheap. I know that he's a massive transfer in real life, very expensive player, very good player, but his kind of game is not going to translate very well into FPL points. So he's not really going to be a good pick for FPL, not really going to get you any points. There's lots of players around the same price or cheaper that are going to get you more points than Enzo Fernandez, even though I do think he is a very good player, just not really the kind of player for FPL. But Chelsea fans, know you're excited about this one. We saw the same thing with Modric last week. I think Modric is a better FPL asset than Enzo, but again, calm down on the excitement on the new players. Just because they're new players doesn't mean they're great FPL picks necessarily. I'm going to put Nick Pope in avoid as well, and I know we got some comments last video when I put Pope fairly low down in the tier list. I do just want to clarify that when we do these tier list videos, they are transfer tier list videos. So I'm not ranking the players on how good they are or how good they are as FPL assets. I'm ranking them on how good they are as transfers. And I do think that if you're going to go for a goalkeeper transfer this week, Pope would not be the player I'd go for. The Game Week 25 blank is going to cause you problems. It's going to mean that you're going to have to play whoever your reserve goalkeeper is, whether that's Ward or whoever else. You're going to have to play them there. And I feel like at 5.5 million, there is just better goalkeeper options who are going to outscore Pope, or at least score similarly to Pope, but at a cheaper price. So to me, Pope is not a particularly good transfer. If you already have him, amazing. Keep him, of course. You know, you don't need to do anything about that, and then maybe think about what you're going to do for Game Week 25. But aside from that, great keeper to have, great keeper to keep, but I would not be buying him right now. So that's why he is an avoid. Just wanted to clear that one up there. Estepinian, I guess we can put him in optional. Like, he's a good pick for the next couple of weeks. He's cheap enough that you can bench him if you don't have too many other problems, or you don't have too many blank game week players in 25. You can just bench Estepinian, or maybe even sell him for that game week potentially. The one thing that does put me off him a little bit, and maybe drops him down to a low tier optional, or maybe even avoid, is the fact that I just don't rate the Brighton's defence that much. I don't think the Brighton's defence is amazing. They don't keep too many clean sheets, but Estepinian does have a little bit of attacking threat. So maybe he's like optional, but again, if you don't have plans to use a chip in Game Week 25, picking Estepinian over some other 4.5 million defenders who could score equally as well might, you know, you may as well pick another defender if you think you're going to be worried about Game Week 25. Again, free hitters that week, you don't have to worry about these problems, but in general, most people are. Mitrovic, seems like an odd time to go for Mitrovic. I think there's just other forwards that I would prefer to go for right now, so I guess we'll put him in optional. I don't think he's a terrible pick. He's still got very good numbers. He's still a very good striker. He's had a couple of difficult games, I suppose, and now the fixtures are going to get a little bit better for Fulham, and there's no blank. There are some things to like about Mitrovic, but I just don't think he's very high on the priority list. Same kind of thing with Tony. Decent striker, decent player to have in your team. The problem with Tony, which maybe drops him slightly below Mitrovic, is that blank in 25. So I think, again, we're going to put him low tier optional. Good player, not the best for structure. We've got Arsenal up next, which is a difficult fixture. In fact, maybe the fact that it's Arsenal does drop him into the avoid category. I do feel like he is a good player, though. I mean, I'm sure that's pretty obvious to all of you guys. He is a good FPL asset, but is now the time to go for him? Probably not, right? Probably not. We've got 2 game weeks left until that blank. We really do need to be thinking about actually removing players like Tony rather than bringing them in. Like, in fact, if I'm totally honest, there is a particular forward on this tier list who I would remove Tony for immediately. Same with Mitrovic, but we'll get to that a little bit later on as we approach the double game week players. I think you know where I'm going with this one. Thiago Silva, I think he's an okay pick. I think he's fine. I do still prefer Badiashile for 5 million. 5 million Badiashile. He's the new Chelsea defender who's not actually registered for playing in the European competition. He's not a homegrown player either, so he can't play in the Champions League, which means Badiashile is pretty much not going to be rotated. He's going to be the Premier League centre-back, whereas maybe Thiago Silva, Koulibaly, they can play in all competitions, so maybe they're slightly more rotation risk. So I feel like in a straight battle between 5.5 Thiago Silva and 5 million Badiashile, who's done okay for bonus points as well recently, I'm going for Badiashile every time. So does that mean Thiago Silva is an avoid? I don't think so necessarily. I don't think he's a terrible pick by any means, but I do think there are other options that I slightly prefer. Kepa Arrizabalaga, you know, he's just a goated goalkeeper. Like, he is one of the, you know, if you're going for a goalkeeper right now, it's between him and, I guess, the double game week goalkeepers. So, he's been doing so well. He's very, very cheap as well. I feel like I never like to recommend a goalkeeper transfer, but I feel like at this point, we're getting to a stage where those of you guys who don't own Kepa, you're just falling behind more and more each week. So maybe at some point we do just have to say, you know, you just have to get him. You just have to get him in your team. I don't think he's a priority transfer for most of you guys, but he's definitely a player we need to be aware of. Reece James is, I'm not happy putting him in any other category than optional. I don't want to say he's an avoid because we know what he can do. I don't want to say he's a must-buy either because we know what he can do. He goes both ways. He blows hot and cold. You're either going to get a mega haul from him or you're going to get 1-pointers and 0-pointers. I'm not quite ready personally to go for Reece James because I feel like I want to see him get a few games under his belt before we maybe see him consistently start 60+ minutes. We already saw him get a 59-minuter last game week. Could there be one more game week of a sub 60-minute kind of inclusion in the Chelsea team? Possibly. So yeah, he is a fantastic player. I do love him as an FPL asset. I enjoy the risk of him, but maybe we can wait one more week potentially. I don't think we have to go for him right this second, but you can if you want. But that's going to be on you guys. I'm not going there on the recommendations. Fabian Schär probably would not be going for at all, to be honest. Similar to kind of Nick Pope, a little bit expensive. If you really do want to, go on another Newcastle defender, I would just go for Botman. Or maybe Dan Burn as well. They're a little bit cheaper, quite a lot cheaper to be fair, but we do still have that Newcastle blank in 25 to contend with, so just do be aware of that. Luke Shaw, again, another player who blanks in game week 25. Manchester United have been doing very well, and I do think Luke Shaw is a player you want to own for the long term as well. But again, he's going to have to go in the optional category. I'm going to put him alongside Estepinian because, Manchester United and Brighton, even though they do have that blank, they do have some very good fixtures, and both of these players have a decent amount of attacking threat. Maybe you could say the same thing about Fabian Schär, to be honest, so maybe bump him up one. But yeah, certainly Luke Shaw is a player you want to own, I think, but do we need to go for him this week? Have you maybe missed the boat on that one? 23, 24, then a blank. Maybe just get him in 26, to be honest. Bruno Fernandes, playing very well. Obviously, on penalties, we know that now. But again, the blank puts me off. I feel like if you're going to go for midfielders right now, Bruno Fernandes is not top of the priority list for midfielders. And yes, he did score that penalty, but really Fernandes is all about the creativity and the assists, and we're not going to see him get too many goals outside of penalties. He will get the occasional goal, don't get me wrong, but his goal scoring numbers, particularly the underlying numbers, are not anything amazing. Still think he's a really good pick, and I know a lot of you guys are going to have Fernandes right now. You got to think, a lot of people are actually considering selling Fernandes to try and get some more Arsenal or Man City midfielders in. So therefore, is this a good week to buy him when a lot of people are actually considering selling him? I'm not saying he is a sell or a player that you should sell, but for a lot of people, he's going to be your only route to get an Arsenal or Man City midfielder into your team. And that's got to be considered. Those players are going to be the priorities, and you're going to see later on in this tier list that we are going to see the likes of Arsenal and Man City players a lot higher on this tier list than a Fernandes. So when we're talking about priorities of transfers, and this video, like I keep saying, this is about transfers, not the quality of players. Is Fernandes a good transfer this week? Possibly not. Harry Kane, on the other hand, I think you have to put up a good argument for him. Like, he is so consistent. Obviously, he is up there with Trippier as, you know, the kind of second tier of insane FPL point scorers. You got Erling Haaland at the top, scoring an insane amount of points. Then slightly under that, we have Kane and Trippier. Those are the kind of two next on the list, right? So, yeah, definitely a good player to have. Kane doesn't blank in Game Week 25. He's got really good fixtures over the next two as well, which is pretty nice. We're expecting him to continue his amazing goal-scoring form. He's just so reliable. He's just so reliable. Kind of like Trippier, just that super reliable player that you kind of want in your team. And I would say the reason why I've put the likes of Kane, Trippier, and Kepa in the good transfer category is because I feel like these three players are very much the foundation of your team at the moment. You've got Erling Haaland in your team, foundation. He's staying in your team. He's never going to leave. And then after that, you've got some other players who are going to stay in your team and never going to leave. Kane, Trippier, and players like Kepa as well are going to be the same kind of similar type of players. They just sit in your team, tick along with those points, get you those points nice and regularly, and then you spice things up around these kind of players. So yeah, we're going to put him there. Moving on to some really, really popular single game week players. First of all, Ben Mee. Obviously, whenever this happens, like every week, we've spoken about this before. Every time a defender scores a goal, they are immediately transferred in by half of the FPL player base, seemingly, because they get loads of points for scoring a goal. And people look at last week and say, hey, look at this amazing score. I think Ben Mee is going to score a goal every single week. And then it doesn't happen. Don't get me wrong, Ben Mee will score the occasional goal, but with Arsenal up next and a blank in 25, really the only good fixture in the next three is Game Week 24. So it's like you're bringing in Ben Mee now for 4.8 million, where you get a bad fixture from him in Game Week 23. You're probably going to bench him for this Arsenal fixture. Like, I can't really see a situation where I'd want to play, you know, Ben Mee against like any of the top sides. Like, don't get me wrong, Brentford I actually really like as a defence at the moment, and I feel like we do need to bring them into the conversation of picks very soon, Brentford defenders. But as of this moment, Arsenal next, blank in 25. It's just not the right moment to bring in Ben Mee, even if you think he's going to score a header every week, which is just not going to happen. So yeah, straight avoid. He would go even lower than, to be honest, most of these guys. I just don't think he's a good transfer at all. And I know that's going to be controversial, and I know some of you guys watching this video right now will have already transferred in Ben Mee because his transfer in numbers are like super high, but hey, one of those things, you know, we see it every week. When a defender scores a goal, people transfer him in. But yes, he'd be somewhere around here for me. The good thing about me is I don't mind him really as a long-term pick, but there's little point in going for him now when you could just go for him later. There's no real benefit for going for him now, which is what puts him in the avoid category. Marcus Rashford, are you a bit, if you haven't got Rashford yet, are you a little bit late on the Rashford train? I mean, yes, definitely. If you haven't got Rashford already, you definitely are probably thinking, oh, I wish I got him sooner, but hey, you didn't. Blank in 25, but again, he's another one of those players who you are going to want in your team long term. Do prefer him to the likes of Fernandes, so I do think he has to go slightly higher points potential than Fernandes at a decently cheaper price as well. I guess he has to go in good transfer despite the blank. He is going to be one of the players that I would say, you know, even if you're transferring all of your blank game week players out, in Game Week 25, I would say Rashford is one of those blank Game Week players that you would actually want to keep and just leave him on the bench and, you know, prioritize having those bench players who can come in and, you know, substitute for Rashford for that one game week. So you've got Rashford ready for future game weeks, which I think like kind of nudges him up to a good transfer, but we are getting very close to that blank, and I do think we need to be aware of that one. Missima, I'm going to put him in a similar kind of situation. I feel like he does go higher than Trippier, because I do prefer Mitoma to Trippier right now. If I had to pick one to transfer into my team, it would be Mitoma. Like, he's a legend. I've spoken about this so much. I think he's an absolute legend. I think the problem for a lot of people isn't that they don't like Mitoma as a transfer, and I'll put myself in this category. It's not that I don't like him as a transfer, but the reason I haven't transferred him in is just because there's been other priorities, and that's been the double game week players. And I think for a lot of people, you're going to be in the same situation. So even though Mitoma is the most popular transfer of any player so far this game week, for me, he's still not going to be quite in the great transfer or must-buy category. One, because of the blank in 25, and two, because of all of these other options. But that doesn't make Mitoma a bad pick. I still think he's a good transfer, and I think he's cheap enough to put on your bench as well. As long as you got, like, and all of you guys are going to have your own plans and your own ideas of how you're going to deal with Game Week 25. And I'll say this consistently, I say this every week. If you've got a good plan for Game Week 25, then that involves Mitoma, then Mitoma is an amazing pick. That's not going to be the situation for everyone, though, so we have to kind of strike a balance here somewhere. And again, we've got all of these single game week players. I feel like none of them can quite break into the great transfer category, because the double game week players have to be considered the best players to get. If you're not tripled up on Arsenal, if you're not tripled up on Man City, then that's kind of where we're looking at, right? That's where we're looking for Game Week 23. So with that said, let's get some Arsenal players in, and then we'll do some Man City players. So first of all, Ben White. I think he's a good transfer, not a great transfer. I do worry a little bit about his minutes, but in general, he should start 90% of games, and we have the hope that he doesn't get substituted off early. We have seen it a couple of times, and I probably wouldn't take the risk on White personally unless it was kind of a financial thing. You know, you want to go for a cheaper player. I would prefer to go for a slightly more expensive Arsenal defender just to get that nailed on this, but look, hey, still a good transfer, still a good player to pick, particularly if you are on a bit of a budget. Do prefer Gabriel. So Gabriel, going to put him straight in, great transfer. Not super popular among Arsenal players, among FPL transfers in general. So far, Gabriel has not been that popular. Like, a little bit crazy to me, because to me, he's my favourite Arsenal defender. So he goes straight in there. Great attacking threat. Super nailed on. 5.2 million is a fairly decent price for him as well. It looks pretty good. Martinelli, I feel like his time has maybe passed as a great... Like, if you don't have Martinelli already, is there any real reason to buy him? Probably not. I'm going to put him in optional, because maybe there are some of you guys where he could be a decent pick. And I think Martinelli, his numbers are still good. His actual output hasn't been amazing. Like, people compare Martinelli to Almiron at the moment because they've both kind of dropped off in points. But the difference is Almiron is not getting in good goal-scoring opportunities. He is not creating for his teammates. Martinelli, his performances have looked good, but it hasn't quite come off for him recently. So I think there is still discussion to have about Martinelli. I don't think he's necessarily a must-sell. There are other options that are much better than him at Arsenal, and we could see him rotated with Trossard. I have to say at this point, you know, maybe, you know, I said before, I think Martinelli was very much first choice, and I do still feel like he is the priority first choice player, but I am leaning more and more now to say that maybe there may be occasional rotations, and when going into a double game week, do you want that? Do you want that? There's just better options right now than Martinelli. So would I be buying Martinelli right now? I would avoid it if possible. In fact, I would probably put him below some of these players, to be honest. Let's put him like around here. Would I sell Martinelli? I would consider it. I really would consider it. As long as you are making sure you still have 3 Arsenal players, and it's not a case of removing Martinelli for a single game week player, because you got to think about it. Martinelli, even if you only get, I don't know, 100 minutes out of him, 110 minutes, you know, that's pretty decent for the underlying numbers he provides. It's only going to take him scoring a goal in this double game week, and we're all going to be raving about Martinelli again. Not saying that's going to happen, but over 100 minutes, 110 minutes, 120 minutes, whatever you think Martinelli is going to play over the double game week, that is still better than 90 minutes of the vast majority of other midfielders. So I don't think it's a horrendous pick. but he wouldn't be the guy I'd go for right now. And there's other Arsenal midfielders and other Arsenal players in other positions that I feel like you've got to go for. Zinchenko I'm going to put below White. I still think it's an okay pick, but I feel like I have to put him like around here. You know, maybe occasional rotation with Tierney, but Zinchenko very much first choice. Doesn't really get enough attacking contributions to make him worth that 5.1 million, I don't think. Saliba, I'm going to put around the same position as White. I think the price difference and maybe White edges it, but Saliba is safe. So in that case, we put Saliba slightly higher than White. This is the highest I've ever put Saliba on a tier list, but the double game week effect is in full force. And the fact that, you know, we got to consider rotation a little bit. I definitely Gabriel in a straight pick between Gabriel and Saliba. It's an easy decision for me, but I still think there is a conversation to have about Saliba. Does do fairly well on bonus points, even if his attacking threat isn't super high. Right, next up Nketiah, he's going to be a must-buy. He's got the best underlying numbers of any Arsenal players right now. He's constantly looking like he's going to score, maybe excluding that Everton game. But we'll forget that Everton game for now because that is in the past. But yes, Nketiah has been Arsenal's primary goal-scoring threat. We've still got a little while before Gabriel Jesus is going to be back, so I don't think you need to worry about that. So Nketiah, for me, is my favourite Arsenal player to buy right now. I think there's lots of easy transfers. Tony to Nketiah, easy transfer. Mitrovic to Nketiah, easy transfer. There's going to be several players that you have. Like, even if you've got, like, Nonto. You bought Nonto for double game week 22. If you can move him to Nketiah, I would definitely be doing that. So lots of ways to get Nketiah into your team. He's still very, very cheap compared to some of the other players as well. He's a great pick, an absolutely insane pick. Must buy. Make sure you have him for Game Week 23. That's what I would be making sure of anyway. Odegaard is an interesting one. I'm going to put him in a great transfer. The reason why I'm going to put him in great transfer is because it's difficult to put him in must buy, because obviously I definitely would recommend going for a triple up on Arsenal, not just for this double game week, but for long term as well. They're out the FA Cup, so they shouldn't have too many blanks, and they do have more doubles coming up as well. Odegaard is obviously doing really well, but Saka is doing slightly better than him to the extent where I would say that Saka is arguably worth going for more than Odegaard, but at the same time, if only one of Saka and Odegaard was like available right now, if only one of them was fit, they would be in must buy. But I think at this point you do have a choice. I would say these four players you see at the top, Nketiah, you should definitely have. And then pick two players out of Saka, Odegaard and Gabriel. I would prefer to go for Saka. And obviously if you've already got Ben White, then like, look, you're sorted. You've already got that third Arsenal player. But yeah, I would say whatever you've got plus Nketiah. And then if you've got any space remaining, try and get one of Saka, Odegaard and Gabriel. I would probably put those three players in this order. So your priority order for Arsenal players is Nketiah, Saka, Odegaard and then Gabriel. If you fancy mixing it up, you want to go for one defender. You don't like the triple Arsenal attack. That's absolutely fine as well. Go for Gabriel instead there. But yeah, in general, I think this would be the order of priority for Arsenal players. And I think that is pretty good. I think that's I'm pretty happy with that one, to be fair. And I'm probably going to maybe even try and make sure I've got that Nketiah, Saka, Odegaard triple up myself. I have got Martinelli at the moment, but I tell you what, Martinelli to Saka, Martinelli to Odegaard, that looks like a viable transfer right now. It really, really does. And if you haven't got too many other problems in your team and there's not other areas you can drastically improve using your transfers, then I really would consider Martinelli to Saka or Odegaard to get the most ideal triple up you possibly can, because it could be pretty good. Right, let's put some Man City players in this tier list to finish this off. First of all, player not many people are talking about, Grealish. I think he would be the worst, I guess, FPL asset Man City attacker I would consider. I guess he's optional. I think he's pretty nailed on at the moment, and he's playing very well. He's actually probably been one of Man City's shining beacons of light during their kind of tough form, I guess. So I'm going to put him in optional. I'm going to put Ederson in good transfer. I still think he is going to be the best goalkeeper to pick at this moment. Doesn't get bonus points, doesn't get save points, but he's nailed on, which is obviously very good. He's slightly cheaper than the likes of Nick Pope. And Man City has still got very good defensive numbers, and I know they haven't necessarily been keeping clean sheets every week, but you've got to consider who have Man City's opponents been recently. They played Chelsea, they kept a clean sheet there. You know, they played Manchester United, they've played Spurs twice. So they played Manchester United, a team that does well against City all the time. They've played Spurs twice. Spurs always score against Man City. So I know people will be judging Ederson, and they'll be judging Man City defenders based on these games. but the underlying numbers are good, and they happen to have played against teams that they typically struggle against, and now those fixtures are in the past, right? So, hey, look, surely the future is looking bright for Man City defenders, and Ederson is nailed on. Does he go higher than this? Probably. I would put him like there. I think he's a good transfer. I think if you're looking for a new goalkeeper, Ederson is your guy. And I know some of you guys are selling Ederson because he's blanked recently. No way. No way. He's still my favourite Man City kind of defensive player. Possibly. Maybe we could go somewhere else. Let's look at some defenders. Right, okay. Rico Lewis, best 3.9 million defender, or sub 4 million defender by a country mile. And at a point where there is a lot of rotation for Man City, Lewis has been a relative mainstay, and he does seem to be quite crucial to the way Man City want to play at the moment. So he is going to be really important. He's only 3.9 million. I think the value of Man City players has gone down in general recently because of, they're not performing at their best of their best. There has been a lot of rotation. So if you're going for a third Man City player, what's wrong with Rico Lewis? If you get a double game week here, if he doesn't play occasionally, who cares? You only spent 3.9 million on him, so surely you're going to have other players who are, can come in his place. I think he's a good option to have. I genuinely do. So, yeah, I think he is, I would say good transfer. I like Rico Lewis. I think he's a nice one. Akanji, I think pretty good transfer. I think I'd quite like to go for him. I'd probably go for him ahead of Saliba, so let's put him there. Good transfer again. Yeah, like that one. Ake. I think he is probably the Man City defender to own right now, right? If we're going for a Man City defender, it's probably going to be Ake. There's no Cancelo at the team anymore. I know Pep Guardiola has spoken about what kind of other players can play at left back. Let's be honest, we're not talking about left back, we're talking about left centre back. And Ake is the nailed on player on that left side of the defence at the moment. There's no real other players that can play that in that place other than maybe Laporte, who is heavily out of favour right now. There's apparently some problems or attitude problems or clashes between Pep. Seems to be clashes between Pep and everyone at the moment. But yeah, Laporte is, that guy who's kind of struggling to get in the team at the moment. Stones is injured, which basically means the defenders, well, Diaz has hardly had any minutes under his bench. Ake has been actually a player who's been playing consistently well. Does he go into good transfer based on that? I still think that Ake is the best Man City defender to go for. There we go. I still think he is. Don't think it's essential. I don't think it's a must-buy, and I will put him lower down than all of these Arsenal guys. So if you haven't got these Arsenal guys, they're definitely higher priority than going for an Ake. But look, I think Man City's defensive numbers are going to start translating into results soon. And when we get these better fixtures, finally some better fixtures for Man City, it's just been an unfortunate period for them. But we've got to look at some attackers, and there's two. There's two. I know two attackers that all of you guys are talking about. First is De Bruyne. Is he essential? No. Is he a must-buy? No. Is he a good player to buy? Yes. He's got a double game week. He's Kevin De Bruyne. I know people are going to be worried about his blank last game week. Of course you are. He didn't even start the game. You're going to worry about that one. But Pep Guardiola typically doesn't start De Bruyne against defenses, three-man defenses. We saw that when Man City played Spurs last time, Alvarez did very well in that game, and it kind of worked without De Bruyne. So De Bruyne was given this opportunity as a rest, as a rotation. He has not been dropped. I'm happy to put my neck out here, and if I'm wrong about this one, feel free to absolutely brutalise me. But De Bruyne has not been dropped. He was rested. He was rotated. It wasn't the right game for him. And now he's had that nice, lovely rest. He's going to be fit and ready to go for the next two games in a double game week. Let's not suddenly pretend De Bruyne is a bad player. Still leading the leaderboards in terms of assists. His link-up play with Haaland is still going to be very, very good, we imagine, over the double game week. He's still a good pick. I would prefer to go for Saka and Ødegaard just because of their cheaper prices if I had to choose between the two. But if you can get all of them, I still think that's good. But do you think Mahrez edges him? I think Mahrez edges him and probably edges Gabriel as well. Potentially edges Ødegaard. I don't know. Maybe I've gone a little bit too far with that one. I think the one thing that puts me off of Mahrez is that when Champions League comes back, he he's the Champions League player, right? Like, he's typically the player who plays in the Champions League. Now, we haven't had Champions League in a while. Champions League is coming back. Does that mean Mahrez is going to start playing in the Champions League and getting rested in the Premier League? Maybe, maybe. The thing is, Mahrez has been one of Man City's best players at the moment. He's putting up better numbers than De Bruyne. He's significantly cheaper than De Bruyne. His expected minutes, if you consider that De Bruyne does get the occasional rest, so it seems now, occasional rest, and doesn't always play the full 90 minutes. Mahrez is kind of competing a little bit with De Bruyne's minutes a little bit. I still think De Bruyne will get more minutes, so if minutes is your priority, then De Bruyne is your pick. But Mahrez is, his attacking output is really good at the moment. He's on those free kicks as well, doing well there, some set pieces. And he's like in the right positions. He's in good attacking positions. I mean, he hit the crossbar. Was it the crossbar or the post? Can't remember. Against Spurs yesterday. So we were very close to seeing a Mahrez return in that game. Very, very close. He's still a very, very good pick. And I feel like at this point, there is argument to say, and I'll let you guys discuss this one in the comments because I'd be interested to hear some of your thoughts, that there is argument to say that when you consider price as well, Mahrez is possibly the better pick out of Mahrez and De Bruyne right now. If money is no issue, then De Bruyne comes into the conversation, of course. And there's maybe a little bit more of a fierce debate there to be had, putting De Bruyne maybe ahead of Mahrez. But if we're thinking about prioritising where we want to put our money in FPL right now, Mahrez at 7.7 million is a very good player for a very good price with a double game week, who seems to be one of Man City's best players at the moment, looking like the most likely Man City player to get the most points. I believe, actually, I looked at the predicted points on the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points algorithm thing, and Mahrez has the same predicted points as De Bruyne for Game Week 23, and it's 10 predicted points. Let's see what happens there. But if he's got the same predicted points and he's cheaper, then he's the one to go for, right? So yeah, we're going to put Mahrez there. I'll be tempted to move Mahrez even higher, but I'm not going to do that because I do worry a little bit about Man City. I worry a little bit about the rotation. But there's still, like, I don't think you have to triple up on Man City. But I think what we're basically saying with this tier list is you're seeing so many Arsenal players and Man City players. They just are the priority transfers right now. I would be making sure you tripled up on Arsenal and minimum of 2 Man City players. You're going to have Erling Haaland already. Make sure that's supplemented with at least one other player. The triple up, I don't think is essential. It's not a must-do, must-buy, must-have, but it's still something that you should probably strongly consider if you haven't got that already. So look, there we go. That's going to be the final tier list. Priority of transfers are going to be double game week players. That's just how it works. We had the same situation last game week where I know a lot of you guys were like, I can't believe you've not put in Mitoma higher. But double game week midfielders outscoring Mitoma. Rashford's already outscoring him with another game to play. Fernandes matching his score, well, almost matching his score with another game to play. So, look, the double game week players are just going to be the priority, even above some of the better single game week players. But not all double game week players are higher priorities. Blank game week 25 to contend with as well. It's a messy time. We get into a messy period of the FPL season, which is why I've just created a 35 minutes long tier list video. Ugh, there we go. We're done. Thank you so much for those of you guys who made it through this entire video. Congratulations to anyone who's lasted this long. The patience is unrivaled, unmatched. So congratulations, thank you. Please do leave a like. Please do subscribe. We're going to try and make some more concise content as we go through the rest of the videos of the week. But as the first video of the week, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to discuss. So I wanted to put this all out there in one video, ranking a bunch of players. So hopefully that was useful to some of you guys. But we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching once again. See you on the next video, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.